In a video about the exposure triangle, we touched base on the three camera controls we have at our disposal, those being the aperture, shutter, and ISO. Let's do a deeper dive today on one of those controls, the aperture. My name is Timothy Reese, and I've worked in the television, film, and photography world as a director of photography and a photographer for nearly 20 years. Check out my videos as we cover not only the how, but also the why of various technical and creative techniques used in the creation of real images. The aperture, commonly referred to as the iris, controls how much light hits your camera's sensor. A lens has a diaphragm at the rear end called the iris. This mechanism of overlapping metal flaps can twist down into a tiny pinhole or open wide into a large opening. The more open it is, the more light gets in. The more closed it is, the more light is stopped from reaching the lens. The number that relates to the size of this opening is called the f-stop. The f-stop is calculated by dividing the focal length of the lens with the diameter of what's called the entrance pupil. If you think of the pupil of your eye and how it can constrict when the light is bright or expand in dark environments, well, the camera's aperture does basically the same thing, enlarging or shrinking the entrance pupil. Because the f-stop is expressed as a ratio, the numbers that reflect your aperture might seem odd or counterintuitive at first. You know, it's not as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4. But you just need to remember this one rule. The lower the number, the wider the aperture. And the wider your aperture, the more light will reach your sensor. For those of you who might be wondering, there's no standardized definition of what the F in f-stop means. However, in 1895, John Hodges created the fractional number system and abbreviated it the F number. Well, many believe the F came from that. The term stop could be traced to John Waterhouse, who in 1858 created a system of discs with varying holes drilled into them, which he called the Waterhouse stop system. These functioned as the camera's iris and were literally used to stop light from entering the camera. For your reference, a typical f-stop range of numbers that you will often see is f14, f2, f28, f4, f56, f8, f11, f16. Each change in number from one to the next is referred to as a stop and is the equivalent of cutting the light transmission in half and hence the brightness of your image. So an image exposed at f2.8 will be twice as bright as one exposed at f4. Now, I should note that some cinema lenses might refer to the f-stop as a t-stop. Now, there are some slight differences between the two terms, but we'll talk about those in another video. Lenses with an aperture that can open to such a small number as 1.4 or 2 are often referred to as being a fast lens. This is because of an aperture of such a low number can allow a lot of light in. This term is used not because the lens can move or focus fast, but because a faster shutter speed can be used due to the increased amount of light you'll get from a wider aperture. This is important when photographing fast-moving subjects, as a higher shutter speed can freeze your subject's motion. Lenses that don't have the ability for a large aperture, something more like f4 or 5.6, are often called slow lenses. Now, although that might sound insulting, it's really just due to the fact that with less light from your iris, you might need to use a slower shutter to compensate. Besides being an exposure control, the biggest effect aperture will have on your image is going to be what's called the depth of field. Depth of field refers to how deep your focus plane is. This is going to determine how much is in focus in front of and behind your subject. Commonly, this is seen by how soft the background of your image becomes, but in extremely wide open apertures, it can even determine if each of your subject's eyes are in focus. Depth of field is the result of more than just the size of your aperture opening, as your focal length and the position of your subject to the lens is also a factor. The concept of depth of field and its creative uses and challenges will be discussed in a future video, but for now, just remember, a wider aperture, meaning a lower number, is going to result in a shallower depth of field or a softer focus background. As a visual example of what I'm talking about, I'm currently shooting with a 28mm prime lens at a f1.8. The background is less than 10 feet behind me. I'm probably only about 4 feet away from the camera, and if I reach my hand out in front of my face, you can see how shallow the depth of field can be, that within arm's reach, my face is already blurry. Using a lens with a wide aperture opens up more creative options than using a slow lens when it comes to how much you can manipulate your depth of field. If you want to see more camera tutorials, please subscribe to my channel and feel free to leave a comment about a future video you might want me to make. These interactions really help to let me know that I'm on the right track in delivering videos that people will find helpful and educational. Until next time, thanks for watching.